Hey Pixels! Welcome back to part 2 of this responsive portfolio website tutorial. In this video, I'll show you how to code this responsive, clean, one-page portfolio website using the latest techniques in web development. Flexbox and CSS Grid have changed the game for web developers around the world. It's now easier than ever before to code responsive, complex layouts for all the different screen sizes that exist in the world today. So without any further delay, let's get started. For this website, we're going to export the background shapes, the portrait photo, and social media icons into an image folder for our website. First, click the background shapes, go to File, Export Selected. Make sure format is set to PNG and export for is set to web. Now do the same to export the portrait photo. We're also going to export SVG versions of our social media icons. Select all the icons. You may need to ungroup to make selecting easier. Then go to File, Export Selected to export them to the image folder. Make sure format is set to SVG Embed and select Optimize File Size Minify. Now that all of our assets have been exported to our website's image folder, we can jump into coding. First, we're going to create a div with the class name container. Within this div, we're going to create 3 more divs with the following classes: sidebar, content, footer. Within the sidebar div, we're going to use the nav tag and then create an unordered list of menu links. Recall that we designed this menu in part 1 of this series. Now that we've coded our sidebar, we can move on to code our main content area. The content div contains a section with the class name hero. Within the section, we're going to use the image tag to link to our portrait photo. Below the image tag, we're going to create a div with the class hero content. Within this div, we're going to use the h1 tag and the paragraph tag to add our hero title and blurb. Lastly, we're going to use the anchor to create our Hire Me button. We'll give it the class name action btn and write Hire Me as the anchor text. Last but not least, we're going to code our footer area. Within the footer div, we're going to use the footer tag and then create an unordered list, which will be our main social media icons. To do this, we're going to use the unordered list, the list, and the anchor tag, and then within the anchor tag, we're going to add the paragraph tag so that we can write our social media stats. Press Command or Control D to duplicate this line of code 4 times for our 4 social media icons. Then, we're going to open our images folder, select an SVG icon, copy the SVG code, and then paste it within the first list items. Repeat this for the other list items. That's all for the HTML. Now it's time to head on over to our CSS file to style our responsive one-page portfolio. To style our portfolio website, we're going to use the latest in web development, Flexbox and the CSS Grid. It's important to note that we'll be coding mobile first, and then finally using media queries to design for larger screen sizes. So let's get started. As you can see, I've already imported our Google font called Nunito in style 300, 400, and 700. I've also styled the body of our site by declaring Nunito as the font family and giving it a gray background. Back in our HTML file, we set up the structure of our main layout areas, which included our content area, sidebar area, and footer area. Now, we're going to use CSS Grid to name these areas using the Grid Area property. Note that we added to right in the linear gradient property, which allows our gradient to start from right to left when viewed on smaller screens. We're going to select the container div, which contains our sidebar, content, and footer. We'll set the font size to 1.5 em, width to 100%, and height to 100 VH so that it takes up the entire height of the browser window. To create a CSS grid layout, simply use the declaration display grid. We're also going to name our grid template areas, which include sidebar, content, and footer. We'll set our grid template columns to 1 fraction and size our 3 grid template rows to 130 pixels, 800 pixels, and 250 pixels. Lastly, we're going to select all 3 template areas and set their padding to 1 em. Now, we're going to apply styles to our general portfolio elements. To style our menu items in our sidebar, we're going to select the NavUL, remove margin and padding, and we're going to use Flexbox to easily make our nav menu items responsive using the display flex declaration. In the next lines of code, we're going to style our nav list items and anchors by removing the list item bullets, adjusting padding, link colors, and other font styles so that it looks similar to our design mockup in part 1 of this series. We're also going to add a 0.3 second transition and set hover opacity to 1 so that when the links are hovered, they turn white, and when they're not, they're low opacity. We're also going to style the main content elements, which consist of our main content section, hero text area, and hero image. We'll set our hero image width to 200 pixels, apply font sizes and font weights, and color the text accordingly. Lastly, we'll style the call to action button, which we gave the class name of ActionBTN in our HTML, and style the font, padding, border radius, and colors to turn our anchor link into a bold Hire Me button. We're also going to add a transition of 0.3 seconds so that there is a shadow that appears behind the button on hover. Now, let's style the footer section of our portfolio website. This is where our social media icons and stats live. As you can see, just like our nav, we'll use Flexbox to make our social media icons responsive. Select the SVG tag and size the width of our social media SVGs to 40%. As I mentioned earlier, the styles above are mobile first, which is why we're going to now use a media query to modify how our website looks on larger browser windows. Let's write a media query for when the browser has a minimum width of 1040 pixels. First, select the website's container and declare our grid template areas. Note that on large screens, our sidebar is beside both the content and footer grid areas. Our two grid template columns will be set to 300 pixels, 1 fraction, and our two grid template rows will be set to 1 fraction auto. On the next lines of code, we're going to simply style the other elements such as the nav, hero text, and footer social icons. Note that for the nav UL, we've changed its flex direction to column and we removed to right from the linear gradient property so that it starts from top to bottom. We've also changed the float of our portfolio image to the right, set max width for the footer UL to 960 pixels, and reduced the width of our SVGs to 20%. That's how you code this responsive one-page portfolio website using the latest web development techniques, CSS Grid and Flexbox. Subscribe to XLPixel for more great design, code, and tech videos just like this one. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.